On a crisp autumn morning in New Delhi, Dr. Raj Kumar stared at the peculiar blue-skinned being sitting across from him in his genetics research lab. Her name was Zira, and she was part of the first official alien diplomatic mission to Earth. While most of her kind focused on technology exchanges and cultural studies, Zira had one burning question that brought her to this small lab on the outskirts of the city. "So you're telling me," she said, her silver eyes narrowing with skepticism, "that humans reproduce through a completely natural biological process? Without any genetic engineering or artificial enhancement?" Raj couldn't help but smile at her disbelief. As Earth's leading geneticist, he'd explained complex concepts to countless students and colleagues, but never to someone who found the basic concept of natural reproduction so bewildering. "That's exactly right," he replied, pulling up some holographic displays of human DNA sequences. "We evolved this way over millions of years. Each child is a unique combination of their parents' genetic material." Zira's antenna twitched, a sign of agitation in her species. "But the variations. The diversity. Look at your population. Different heights, skin colors, facial features. How can such randomness produce viable offspring?" "That diversity is precisely what makes us strong," Raj explained, bringing up more genetic markers on the display. "Natural selection has refined our reproduction process over countless generations. Each variation might offer advantages in different environments." The alien scientist leaned forward, her specialized translator pendant glowing as she spoke. "In our civilization, we've engineered our reproduction for optimal outcomes for the past 50,000 years. Every child is designed for peak efficiency and specific roles. The idea of leaving it to chance seems incredibly risky." Raj nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your perspective. But there's something beautiful about the unpredictability. Each human child is a unique individual, with potential that even their parents couldn't have predicted." "But the failures!" Zira exclaimed. "The genetic disorders, the complications, how do you accept such inefficiency?" Raj's expression grew serious. "We've made great strides in treating genetic conditions, yes. But we've also learned that what some might call imperfections often come with unexpected gifts. Some of humanity's greatest achievements came from people who thought differently, who weren't designed for their roles but found their own path." Zira's skepticism seemed to waver slightly. She pulled out her own data pad, covered in swirling alien script. "Our historical records show that your species achieved space travel and complex civilization without genetic optimization. It seems statistically improbable." "Perhaps that's because you're measuring success by your civilization standards," Raj suggested gently. "Human innovation often comes from our need to overcome challenges, to adapt naturally rather than through engineering." As the day progressed, Raj showed Zira more evidence of human reproductive success, population statistics, genetic diversity studies, and historical records of human achievement. With each new piece of data, her rigid scientific worldview seemed to crack just slightly. "I propose an experiment," she said finally, her antenna now swaying with curiosity rather than agitation. "I want to study human reproduction and development in detail. Not just the genetics, but the entire process, from pair bonding to child rearing." Raj raised an eyebrow. "That's quite an undertaking. Are you sure you're prepared for such an immersive study?" "My species values thoroughness in research," Zira replied with what might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. "And clearly, there's something about human reproduction that our engineered approach has missed. Something that has produced a species capable of surprising even us." As the sun set over New Delhi, casting long shadows through the lab windows, Raj agreed to help Zira with her study. Neither of them knew it then, but this conversation would be the beginning of a project that would challenge both their species' understanding of life, love, and the countless ways that nature finds to flourish. Little did they realize that their discussion in that quiet lab would spark a revolution in both human and alien understanding of reproduction, leading to questions that would shake the very foundation of Zira society's beliefs about genetic engineering and natural evolution. Over the next few weeks, Zira immersed herself in human society with an intensity that surprised even Raj. She set up her observation post in a bustling community center in South Delhi, where families of all types gathered for various activities. The alien researcher found herself particularly drawn to a weekly parenting group that met in the building's sunny courtyard. "Your young ones," she observed one morning, watching toddlers chase each other around a playground, "they're so chaotic." Her silver eyes tracked a small girl who was stubbornly climbing up a slide in the wrong direction while her mother patiently watched. "In my world, children at this age would already be sorted into their preliminary educational pods based on their engineered aptitudes." A young mother named Priya, who had become surprisingly comfortable with the blue-skinned alien's presence, laughed as she bounced her 6-month-old son on her knee. "Chaotic is definitely the right word. Little Arjun here still doesn't sleep through the night, despite every trick in the book." Zira's antenna twitched in that now familiar sign of confusion. "But that's so inefficient. Our infants are engineered to require exactly 6 hours of sleep, perfectly synchronized with their caregivers' schedules." "Life isn't always about efficiency," Raj interjected, having joined them during his lunch break. He'd made a habit of checking in on Zira's research, partly out of professional curiosity and partly because he found her perspective increasingly fascinating. Sometimes the challenges make the journey more meaningful. As if to demonstrate this point, Arjun chose that moment to grab one of Zira's antennae, causing her to emit a surprised chirping sound that sent the baby into fits of giggles. The other parents in the group tried to hide their amusement as the dignified alien scientist attempted to disentangle herself from the infant's surprisingly strong grip. "Fascinating," Zira muttered, making notes on her datapad once she was free. "The child showed no fear of my clearly non-human appearance. In fact, he displayed curiosity and joy at our interaction. This suggests an inherent adaptability in human infants that we hadn't considered in our studies." Later that afternoon, Zira accompanied Raj to a local high school where he occasionally gave guest lectures. The teenage students, initially shy around the alien visitor, soon bombarded her with questions about her world. "So you guys never get to choose what you want to be when you grow up?" asked one student, looking horrified at the concept. "That's like, totally against human rights. Our system eliminates uncertainty and career anxiety," Zira explained, though Raj noticed her tone held less conviction than it had weeks ago. "Each individual knows their purpose from conception. But what if you're meant to be something else?" A quiet voice came from the back of the room. It belonged to Dev, a student who rarely spoke in class. "My parents wanted me to become a doctor, but I dream of being a classical dancer." How can anyone know their purpose before they've had a chance to discover it? Zira's response was interrupted by the arrival of Raj's colleague, Dr. Ayesha Rahman, who burst into the classroom with excitement. "Raj! The results from the comparative DNA study are in. You're going to want to see this." In the lab, Ayesha pulled up a holographic display showing side-by-side comparisons of human and alien DNA structures. "Look at these patterns," she pointed to a specific sequence. The randomness in human DNA that Zira's people thought was inefficient? It creates something remarkable. Raj leaned in, his eyes widening. The variation allows for rapid adaptation to new environments. Our inefficient system might actually be more advanced than engineered perfection. Not just that, Ayesha continued, highlighting another section. These sequences show potential for development that engineered DNA doesn't have. It's like, while engineered DNA is a carefully constructed building, human DNA is a seed that can grow in unexpected ways. The news hologram flickered to life, showing a stern-faced alien official from Zira's species. After preliminary studies of human reproductive methods, we have determined their approach to be potentially destabilizing to galactic order. Their unpredictable genetic combinations and neural development patterns could pose a threat to established societal structures. We recommend immediate restrictions on human-alien interactions and possible genetic standardization protocols. The lab fell silent. Raj felt his heart sink as he watched Zira's expression shift from shock to something like determination. But before anyone could speak, another interruption came in the form of little Arjun and his mother Priya, who had become regular visitors to the lab. The 10-month-old baby, now crawling with impressive speed, made a beeline for Zira. To everyone's surprise, he pulled himself up using her leg as support and stood for the first time, looking up at her with a toothless grin. "He's never done that before," Priya exclaimed, quickly recording the moment on her phone. "He's been trying for weeks, but something about Zira just inspired him." Zira stood perfectly still, looking down at the human infant who had chosen her as his support for this milestone moment. Her scientific detachment crumbled as Arjun reached up with one chubby hand, trying to touch her face. "This," she said softly, "this is what they don't understand back home. Every moment with a human child is an adventure in possibility. They're not just developing according to a preset pattern, they're creating themselves." Dr. Aisha moved closer to the holographic display of neural patterns. "And look at this," she pointed to a particular sequence. When Arjun interacted with Zira, his neural patterns actually synchronized with her alien brainwaves in a way we've never seen before. "It's like he's teaching himself to understand her," Raj finished, excitement building in his voice. Human children don't just adapt to their environment, they actively reshape themselves and their world to make new connections possible. Zira carefully picked up Arjun, who immediately grabbed one of her antennae again, but this time she didn't mind. "My people think they've achieved perfection through engineering, but they've actually limited themselves. Human imperfection, your biological uncertainty, it's not a weakness. It's your greatest strength." She turned to her computer terminal and began typing rapidly. "I need to send a report to the council. They need to understand what I've discovered here. This isn't just about reproduction, it's about the very nature of life and growth itself." As she worked, Raj noticed something remarkable on the neural pattern display. "Zira, look at your own readings. Your brain patterns, they're showing adaptability similar to a human's. It's like spending time with us has awakened something that your species' engineering had suppressed." The implications of this discovery hung in the air. If prolonged exposure to human unpredictability could reactivate suppressed neural plasticity in Zira's engineered brain, what did that mean for her entire species? Outside the lab, the rain had stopped, and a rainbow arched across the Delhi sky. Arjun pointed at it excitedly, babbling in his baby language that somehow both Zira and his mother understood perfectly. In that moment, watching the wonder on both the human infants and the alien scientists' faces, Raj realized they were witnessing something revolutionary. The next few hours were a flurry of activity as they documented everything. Zira insisted on recording personal testimonies from Priya and other parents she had met, while Raj and Aisha compiled their genetic and neural research into a comprehensive report. They knew they were racing against time. The council's statement had made it clear that they needed to act fast to prevent their two species from being driven apart. As evening approached, Zira received an unexpected communication from her home world. Her antenna drooped as she read it, but then straightened with determination. "They want me to return immediately," she announced. "They're concerned that I've been contaminated by human influence." Raj felt his heart sink, but Zira wasn't finished. "But they don't realize, that's exactly the point. Every discovery, every connection, every moment of growth comes from being contaminated by new experiences. It's time my people remembered that." The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Raj's lab. 3 high-ranking members of Zira's species materialized in the research facility's transport chamber, their blue skin a shade darker than hers and their formal robes gleaming with embedded technology. The lead official, who introduced himself as Chief Geneticist KYX, wore an expression that even humans could recognize as disapproval. Research Assistant Zira, KYX's translator, rendered his chirps in crisp, cold tones. Your extended exposure to human biological processes has clearly compromised your objectivity. We are here to conclude this experiment and bring you home for rehabilitation. Zira stood her ground, her antenna straight and unwavering. With respect, Chief Geneticist, I believe you need to review my latest findings before making any decisions. She glanced at Raj, who nodded encouragingly. Actually, Raj stepped forward, we've made a remarkable discovery just this morning. Dr. Aisha, would you please bring in the special guest? The door slid open, and Aisha entered with Priya and baby Arjun. But something was different about the infant today. As he babbled happily in his mother's arms, tiny bioluminescent patterns flickered across his skin, patterns that looked remarkably similar to the communication markings of Zira's species. The three officials froze, their antennae twitching in perfect synchronization. Impossible, KYX whispered. Human DNA doesn't contain the markers for bioluminescent expression. Exactly, Zira said triumphantly. Yet here we are. This human child, through nothing more than extended exposure to my presence and completely natural processes, has developed a trait similar to our species. His adaptive genetic structure is actually incorporating beneficial aspects of alien DNA from simple proximity. Raj pulled up the latest scan results on the holographic display. We've been monitoring Arjun's development closely. The changes are completely benign and seem to be enhancing his already extraordinary capacity for nonverbal communication. But here's the truly fascinating part, he's not the only one changing. The display split to show Zira's neural patterns alongside Arjun's. The similarities were undeniable, but what caught everyone's attention were the new neural pathways forming in Zira's supposedly fixed, engineered brain. My hypothesis, Zira explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, is that our species' pursuit of genetic perfection has actually stunted our potential for growth and adaptation. These human children, with their chaotic and unpredictable genetics, are showing us what we've lost. One of the other officials, a younger female named Vex, moved closer to examine Arjun. The baby immediately reached for her antenna, causing her to step back in alarm. But then something extraordinary happened, her own bioluminescent patterns began to pulse in sync with Arjun's. This is unprecedented, Vex breathed, her scientific curiosity clearly overriding her initial prejudice. The child is initiating a connection protocol that we thought only our species could perform. And I'm responding involuntarily. Priya, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Ever since Arjun started spending time with Zira, he's been developing faster than any of the other babies in our parent group. Not just physically, but emotionally too. He seems to understand things that should be beyond his age. Raj nodded, pulling up more data. We've documented similar developments in other children who've had regular contact with Zira. Their neural plasticity increases, their problem-solving abilities accelerate, and most importantly, they maintain all the beautiful unpredictability that makes them human. Chief Geneticist KYX had been silent, his antenna twitching sporadically as he processed this information. Finally, he turned to the third official. Protocol Officer Nix, what are the implications if we suppress these findings? The third alien's response was immediate. Based on the rate of development we're observing, it would be impossible to contain this phenomenon. Human children across the globe are already showing signs of enhanced abilities wherever they've had contact with our kind. To suppress this would mean completely isolating our species from humanity. And that isolation would harm us more than them, Zira added softly. Look at my neural scans again. The changes in my brain, the new connections forming. I'm not being corrupted by human influence. I'm growing. We all could be growing. As if to emphasize her point, Arjun chose that moment to do something extraordinary. He squirmed out of his mother's arms, toddled over to KYX, and placed his tiny hand on the chief geneticist's robe. Immediately, both their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, and KYX's rigid posture softened visibly. The Council's fears about human unpredictability destabilizing galactic order. Vex mused, what if we've been looking at it backward? What if their adaptability is exactly what our civilization needs? Dr. Aisha, who had been quietly taking readings throughout this exchange, suddenly exclaimed, look at this. The neural synchronization isn't just between Arjun and our visitors. Everyone in this room is showing increased brain plasticity and synchronized patterns. It's like we're all evolving together. The implications of this discovery hung in the air like a physical presence. The rigid segregation between engineered and natural evolution was crumbling before their eyes, replaced by something new and unprecedented. The revelation in Raja's lab sparked a chain of events that nobody could have predicted. Within days, research centers across Earth began reporting similar phenomena. In a preschool in Tokyo, children who had regular contact with alien diplomatic staff were developing remarkable abilities to process complex mathematical concepts through bioluminescent patterns. At a playground in Rio de Janeiro, toddlers were forming spontaneous telepathic bonds with their alien visitors. But it was in Raja's lab where the most stunning development occurred, exactly 1 week after the official's visit. Priya brought Arjun in for his regular checkup, but today was different. The moment they entered the lab, every piece of alien technology in the room began responding to the child's presence. Extraordinary, Vex whispered, having chosen to stay behind on Earth to continue the research. He's interfacing with our quantum systems naturally, without any neural implants or technological assistance. Zira, who had been monitoring Arjun's development closely, pulled up a new set of holographic displays. Look at this pattern in his DNA structure. It's not just mimicking our bioluminescence anymore, it's creating entirely new genetic expressions that neither species has seen before. Raj leaned in closer, his eyes widening at the data. It's like his DNA is writing its own evolutionary story. But here's what's really fascinating, he's not becoming more alien. He's becoming more adaptable. More human, in a way we never imagined possible. The lab door slid open, and Dr. Aisha rushed in with more surprising news. You won't believe what's happening at the community center. Remember that teenage dance student, Dev? He's been teaching traditional Bharatanatyam to some of the alien diplomatic children, and... She pulled up a video on her tablet. The footage showed Dev performing a classical dance routine, his movements precise and graceful. But what made everyone gasp was the way his skin glowed with intricate patterns that perfectly matched the rhythm of the dance. Around him, young alien children were attempting to mirror his movements, their own bioluminescence synchronizing with his in a breathtaking display of cross-species artistic expression. The beauty of it, Priya observed, bouncing Arjun on her knee, is that nobody engineered this. It just happened. Because we let it happen. Chief geneticist KYX, who had been receiving regular updates from Earth, suddenly materialized in the lab's communication array. His usually stern features showed signs of what might have been excitement. The Council has reviewed all the data, and they're divided. Some see this as a threat to our way of life. Others. His antenna twitched thoughtfully, others are beginning to question everything we thought we knew about genetic potential. But before anyone could respond, Arjun did something that changed everything. The toddler, now comfortable with his growing abilities, created a bioluminescent pattern that none of them had ever seen before. It wasn't human, wasn't alien, it was something entirely new. He's teaching us, Zira breathed, her scientific detachment completely forgotten as she watched the child experiment with his new abilities. All this time, we thought we were studying human development, but really, the children have been showing us the way forward. The pattern Arjun created began to spread, first to the other children in the research program, then to the adults who spent time with them. It wasn't just a light show, it was a new form of communication, a bridge between species that bypassed all technological aids. Dr. Aisha's instruments were going wild trying to measure what was happening. The neural synchronization is off the charts. It's like we're witnessing the birth of a new kind of consciousness. Not human, not alien, but something in between. Something more. Raj noticed something else in the data. The changes weren't limited to Earth. Reports were coming in from Zira's homeworld about their engineered children beginning to show unprecedented neural plasticity. The rigid patterns they had been designed with were spontaneously adapting, reaching out for something new. "We need to show them," Zira said suddenly, her voice firm with conviction. "Not just the council, but everyone. They need to see what happens when we stop trying to control evolution and start learning from it instead." The lab's communication array hummed to life again, this time showing a vast chamber filled with alien officials. The Galactic Science Council had convened an emergency session, and Earth's research labs were being broadcast live across the galaxy. As they watched, Arjun toddled over to the holographic projection of the council chamber. Without hesitation, he reached out to touch one of the alien faces, and somehow, impossibly, his bioluminescent pattern transferred through the quantum communication network. One by one, the council members began to glow with the same new pattern he had created. "This is what we've been missing," Vex announced to the stunned council. "We engineered our children to be perfect according to our understanding. But these human children, they're showing us that true perfection lies in the ability to grow, to change, to become something more than what we planned." KYX, still present in the holographic display, made an unprecedented gesture. He removed his ceremonial robe of office, revealing his own bioluminescent patterns beginning to shift and change. "I propose," he said, his voice carrying across the galaxy, "that we recognize this moment for what it is, not a threat to our order, but an invitation to evolution itself." In the lab, Arjun laughed delightedly as his patterns danced across his skin, creating shapes and sequences that told a story of two species learning to grow together. Priya held her son close, tears in her eyes as she watched him bridge the gap between worlds that everyone had thought was impossible to cross. Zira, looking at her own changing patterns, turned to Raj with what was definitely a smile. "When I first came here, I doubted everything about human reproduction. I thought it was primitive, chaotic, inefficient. Now I understand that chaos is the source of infinite possibility. And possibility is what gives birth to miracles." 1 year had passed since the groundbreaking discoveries in Raj's lab, and the world had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The small research facility in Delhi had become the center of a new era in human-alien relations, with Raj's lab now occupying an entire campus dedicated to studying what they called the integration phenomenon. On a warm spring morning, Zira stood in the central courtyard of the new research center, watching as children, both human and alien, played together in the specially designed playground. Arjun, now a toddler of 2, had become something of a legend. He moved among the other children, his bioluminescent patterns creating beautiful symphonies of light that told stories without words. "Remember when you first arrived?" Raj asked, joining her at the observation window. "You were so certain that our chaotic reproduction methods couldn't possibly work." Zira's antenna swayed gently in amusement. "I was wrong about so many things. But being wrong, that's part of growth, isn't it? Something my people had forgotten." The facility's main doors opened, admitting a group of visitors that made both Raj and Zira stand straighter. Chief geneticist KYX led a delegation of the highest-ranking scientists from both worlds. But they weren't wearing their formal robes anymore. Instead, their skin pulsed with the free-flowing patterns that had become common among those who spent time with the children. "The results are beyond anything we could have imagined," KYX announced, his translator now barely necessary as the bioluminescent patterns conveyed much of his meaning. The first generation of non-engineered children on our world has been born. They're showing levels of adaptation and creativity that we thought impossible. Dr. Aisha hurried over, her lab coat fluttering behind her. You're just in time. We're about to begin the integration ceremony. She gestured toward the courtyard, where families from both species were gathering. The ceremony had become a monthly tradition, celebrating new developments in human-alien understanding. But today was special. Today, they would witness something unprecedented. Priya brought Arjun to the center of the gathering. Around him stood 6 alien children, all born naturally, the first of their kind in 50,000 years. As they joined hands, their bioluminescent patterns began to merge and flow between them, creating a display that brought tears to the eyes of everyone watching. What you're seeing, Zira explained to the assembled scientists, is not just pretty lights. They're actually rewriting their genetic codes in real time, teaching each other, growing together. Every pattern is a new possibility, a new step in evolution. But it wasn't just the children who were changing. Adults from both species who spent time in the facility found themselves developing new abilities. The rigid barriers between engineered and natural genetics were dissolving, replaced by something more fluid and alive. We thought we had reached the peak of our evolution, KYX admitted, watching the display. We thought engineering was the answer to everything. But look at them, they're achieving things we never dreamed possible, simply by being allowed to grow naturally. The ceremony reached its climax as Arjun, now glowing with patterns that combined both human and alien characteristics, reached out and touched the ground. From that point of contact, bioluminescent flowers began to grow, actual, physical plants that somehow incorporated both Earth and alien DNA. Life finds a way, Raj quoted softly, not just to survive, but to thrive in ways we never imagined possible. A holographic communication suddenly appeared in the center of the courtyard. It was the Galactic Council, but not with more regulations or concerns. Instead, they made an announcement that changed everything. After reviewing the overwhelming evidence from Earth, the Council speaker declared, "We are officially recognizing what we're calling the human factor as essential to galactic evolution. All restrictions on natural reproduction are hereby lifted. Furthermore, we propose establishing integration centers like this one across all aligned worlds." The celebration that followed was unlike anything either world had seen. Human children and alien children danced together, their patterns creating symphonies of light that told stories of hope and possibility. Parents from both species shared knowing looks as they watched their little ones invent new ways of being, new ways of growing, new ways of understanding the universe. Zira found herself standing next to Priya and Arjun as the celebrations continued. The little boy who had started it all was now teaching a group of alien children how to create the bioluminescent flowers, each one unique and beautiful in its own way. "I came here to study human breeding," Zira reflected, her patterns glowing with emotion. "Instead, I learned that the very thing we thought was primitive, the uncertainty, the chaos, the natural variation, was actually the most advanced system in the galaxy. We engineered ourselves into a corner, but your children showed us the way out." Raj joined them, bringing a holographic display of the latest data. "The changes aren't stopping," he said excitedly. "Every new interaction, every new child, every new pattern brings something we've never seen before. But here's the beautiful part, they're not becoming less human or less alien. They're becoming more of who they truly are." As the sun set over the research center, the bioluminescent patterns of hundreds of children and adults created a light show that could be seen from space. Satellites captured the image and broadcast it across the galaxy, a testament to what happens when different species learn not just to coexist, but to grow together. "You know what the best part is?" Arjun asked, speaking clearly despite his young age, another unexpected development. "Nobody knows what's going to happen next. And that's what makes it wonderful." Zira, the alien who had once doubted everything about human reproduction, couldn't help but agree. In the end, the greatest scientific discovery wasn't about genetics or biology or even evolution. It was about letting go of the need to control everything and embracing the beautiful uncertainty of natural growth. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the patterns of light below them seemed to reach up toward the heavens, a bridge between worlds that had been built not by engineering or design, but by the simple, chaotic, perfect process of letting life find its own way forward.